welcome to our panel discussion today. Today we'll talk about the consumer of the future, how do we decode the next gen consumer and win with them. Today I have a very exciting and experienced panel with me. The panelists bring diverse insights from insurgent brands, from established market leading brands, both fast moving as well as durable consumer products. By my reckoning, they cover multiple ages and life stages of consumers and bring an understanding of the best that technology has to offer. Our panel today has Mallika Sadani. She is founder and CEO of the Moms Company. We have Priyanka Salot. She's co-founder of the Sleep Company. Nupresh Shah, who's executive director at Symphony Limited. Pushkaraj Shenoy, he is CEO and whole-time director of Lakme Lever, and Katie Prasad, MD and RVP India and SARC at Zendesk. Now, before I invite the panel to start the discussion, a few observations from my side to set the context. Now, our topic is old, right? So we've been talking about next-gen consumers for a long time. But I think what makes it evergreen is the extent and the pace of change that we can expect to see in India over the next decade. And I would put, these kind of changes and trends into three broad buckets. Firstly, and unsurprisingly, is the demographic changes that we can expect. Unlike a number of other nations which are aging, in 2030 we will still be one of the youngest nations in the world. Millennials and Gen Z will be over 75% of our population, and our median age is going to be a little over 30 years. Compared to the US today, which is already over 40. We are going to add over 140 million households into the middle class and 20 million households into the high income class. Now, that's obviously going to raise consumption. But what we are seeing or beginning to see in India, and this is something that the US and the China have already witnessed over the last few years, is an increasing polarization of value, where you have both value and premium segments benefiting, potentially at the cost of the mass or the mid segments. But I'm sure our panel will talk about far more demographic trends, etc., that they are seeing. On attitudes and behaviors, it is but easy to say that every generation is different from the previous one. I, for one, can't really understand my daughter's generation already. But I think some of the consumer trends that we are seeing is that I think we are at the beginning of a trend of extreme sub-segmentation and personalization. And this is true in consumer products, it's true increasingly in fashion, in electronics, just the extent of hyper-personalization that could happen over the next decade. Second, we are seeing, expectations from brands changing beyond, the utilitarian, requirements from a brand. Consumers are flocking more and more towards brands with purpose. The data from the US, for instance, shows that insurgent brands, and invariably, or typically more purpose-driven and more segmented than established incumbents, already get about 35 to 40% of growth across most consumer categories. And then, of course, physical well-being, mental well-being are two trends, which are accelerating, COVID being, possibly one big driver. So that's really what's happening on consumers, on behaviors and trends. On channels, and that's again a topic that we will discuss today, I think we are still at day one of digital commerce and digitally influenced shopper journeys. And there is, of course, tons and tons of, big data being generated. And, frankly, nowadays, the increasing use of technology in being able to harness what this data can provide to us as brands, marketers, and retailers. So those are really the topics that I would love our panel to discuss, to cover, what we are seeing on consumers, channels, data, and technology, over the course of the next, 75 minutes that we have. But without further ado, let's actually get to the heart of the topic around the consumer of the future, which is, to get my panel going on really understanding how the consumer of the future is different from the present consumer. And to kick us off, Mallika, it'd be great to hear your thoughts what you've seen, how you're using this at the mom's company, and then I'll go around to the other panelists.
Thank you, Joydeep. I think it's a brilliant question to start the panel with. I think what we have seen in our vertical is the fact, and we're a digital first company. And what we've noticed is that, as you very rightly said, the consumer of today and the future is purpose driven. And along with that, he's also very discerning in nature, right? So, on one side, while they're asking questions on brand and then trying to create a personal connect with the brands from the brand story and where the origination was from, who the founders are, what are their stories, the other aspect of it is that the consumers are asking a lot of questions, right? They're not taking people on face value on how it used to be that you put out an ad on TV and I believe what you're saying. The people are asking a lot more questions, right? They're asking you a lot more clarity in terms of how you're making your product. And hence, a lot of stories around how the making of the product goes is also kind of getting a lot more deeper connect with the consumer of today. And that's becoming exceedingly important. The other thing that's becoming very, very important and prevalent is that the consumer of today is also asking questions on what impact the brands are having on the environment. Right. So, in general, the whole conversation on how are you good for me and how are you good for the planet have like massively picked up over the last 1 or 2 years, is what we have seen. Right. So, at the Momsco, for instance, when we started our journey with the mission of helping moms make natural, safe, and effective options through the skincare products that we had launched. And when we launched about 4 years back, people had absolutely zero clarity in terms of what it goes to making of the product, what are the ingredients of the product, right? And today, when I have the conversations, there's a very heavy ingredient led conversation that is driven by the consumer, not really by the brand, right? Where the consumers are asking you to give an explanation. So, for instance, through our course in about 6 months from launch, we had actually had to list all ingredients with their origin, their safety scores, just to give more comfort to the consumer. And that's what's changing. With every awareness building on the consumer, the number of questions that the brands have to answer has become very important. We moved from a stage of trying to prove that I was safe for you by launching toxin free products to proving that we don't have animals getting PETA certified. Moving on to a space where we got into an entire recycling program with a partner at hand, right? To just tell you what is the impact and the carbon footprint that we have as a company on the environment, and what are we doing to sort of offset that, right? And those are the things that are really connecting with the consumer, and going forward we actually see them picking up massively going forward.
Fantastic. Pushkaraj, if I can ask you to weigh in as well. I mean, and you've been running a very successful brand in Lakme and the portfolio brands that you have. Given what Mallika said, what are you observing from the vantage point that you have?
Thanks, Joydeep. I'll build on what Mallika has already said, right? So I totally agree with Mallika that consumers are looking for brands who are extremely authentic, transparent, and ethical. That's slowly becoming table stakes. Next, of course, they're going to spend a larger amount of time and a larger amount of money on brands which have a purpose which they can see, touch, and feel. Right. So just sort of, purpose which is talked about in advertising is no longer going to cut ice with consumers, but they will look for a purpose which they can touch and feel. Right. So here I'll underscore what Mallika said. I think the other big shift, and I think this was always happening, but with the pandemic, I think the world spun a little faster, and we've got there maybe 3 or 4 years earlier, right? Consumers are looking for a higher level of efficacy or higher level of results, and they're willing to pay a premium for that, right? And that efficacy could be driven by science. It could be driven by science split into, let's say, an ingredient story or a source of origin story or a mode of action which you can explain in a credible, believable, compelling way to the consumer, right? And with that comes a very high level of personalization that the discerning consumer is demanding, right? And that sort of underscores your point on hyper segmentation. But this is a segment of one, and the consumer believes that I am truly unique like everyone else around me, but I need the brand to recognize that and cater to my uniqueness, right? And I'll speak a little bit about a brand that we run, Dermalogica. Dermalogica is the world's #1 professional skincare brand. It was born authentic and transparent, right? So Dermalogica was bought by Unilever about 10 years ago, but The founder was a skin therapist who started out with an educational institute and then created a brand because there wasn't a brand which delivered power in the hands of the skin therapist. And from day one, Dermalogica has been an ethical brand, no baddies, uh, vegan, cruelty free, and all of that started at a time when this was way ahead of its time. But I think what's really important is in this brand, we have very strong science stories, and the science is now being amplified, to good effect, right? There are a plethora of vitamin C serums in the market. The Dermalogica vitamin C serum comes at 8,000 rupees for 30 ml. But that's because the formulation quality, the quality of ingredients, the quality assurance in the process is of the highest standards. And therefore, these are consumers who are discerning, they can see through that, and they're willing to pay a premium for it, right? Another product which was created in 1986 but has been reformulated to deliver 48 hours of moisturization is because we've put in a wire mesh technology which which sort of locks in moisture for 48 hours, right? Now, when consumers can see this enhanced delivery and delivery through science and a scientific rationale backing it, consumers are willing to pay a premium for it. And I think that's a big shift. Consumers value their time, they value themselves, and therefore they expect brands to take, recognition of this and over deliver on their promises.
Fantastic. No, that's great, and I love the way that you underscored Malika's points, and then brought out how we can look at science quite differently as well. Katie, views from your side in terms of how the consumer of the future is different from the present.
With after what Malika and Pushkar said about the science and the transparency, I'll build on that same. One thing which is very clear from consumer of yesterday to today and tomorrow, the difference is if a consumer of yesterday was looking at in Indian context, cashbacks, discounts, low price point, I think today's consumer is already behind all of that. They don't look at it. They look at the value. They look at transparency. They look at trust. Can I do business with them and they're still trustworthy? I think consumer of the future is evolved into more of very different, self-driven, engaged, more educated, digitally savvy customer. I think if you look at Malika talked about we're all in the digital first companies. I think tomorrow's customer or which is exactly future customer would always be digitally first and also virtual every day. They kind of live in the look at some of us in ITs and different companies. And last 18 months, all of us figured out how to work from home and still be productive. And with these, several IT companies and several companies, not just IT, several multinational, international, local companies said, you know what, for the future, you could continue to work from home or you can choose to come. So flexibility came into the workplace. And these journeys, that means that kind of impact could be on the consumer. That consumer would always look at convenience because they want to make sure that they get a comfort of home or comfort of office, but convenience and comfort will become center. So that becomes very ingredient in how they do business with everybody else. Number one. Number two, in this, I think in the last 18 months, I think vulnerabilities, trust, and all of those being tested, I think those would be the new learnings that the new consumer will take. That means where they look at the brand and say, you know what, can I trust this brand to deliver what they promise on? I think that is very important. You can only do it when there is a customer touch point. Usually customer touch points, we talk about, hey, we've sent a mass emailer like co-panelist, or we put in a TV ad and people come and buy. No, I think the world is changing towards digital first. That means you probably will be running on social messaging like Instagram and LinkedIn's and Twitter's. Your channel of media have evolved and growing faster. So for businesses, number one, you got to be looking at a digital first virtual everyday consumer. That's the number one persona of your customer, number one for the future. So for consumer, what they look at trust and transparency and convenience as the core thing. And if you look at these three, and if we go down one level below on an underlying pin down on what are the core principles of business driving that. Imagine we say, you come and see me and let's say we talk about a banking. If you have an issue, and a bank will say, come and visit us in the branch and you got to submit this piece of document, you have to go photocopy. If I say that, hey, Joydeep, please come to a branch at, before 3 o'clock on a working day, and come and submit this document for KYC, today you will laugh at that bank. So what world are you living in? What was a normal about year and a half ago, which is acceptable norm, today people will laugh at it. I think tomorrow's actually, there is no KYC. It's automatically recognized. People will automatically identify it, and all that is being taken care, and probably will move towards very digital first as a mechanism, right? So KYC will be completely digital already, and some of those companies who are not still adopting into digital first virtual evidence strategy will be deprived of, because the customer expectations are changing, and customers have less patience. I can tell you only thing actually, as we go towards it, because they have plethora of options, and they look at those three aspects that we talk about it. When you business don't provide, they will move away with one bad interaction. So as per, I work for Zendesk, we do a lot of research about how consumer behaviors are and stuff like that. And one of the trend that we have seen, consumers with about close to 55% of consumers will walk away from your brand with one bad experience. So the patience levels are trimming down and trust levels are going up. So you got to make sure that you promise on what you can deliver, you deliver what you can promise. So these are all very key things. Second, make sure that every interaction that you have is actually drive this great experience. If you don't have a great experience, they will leave. Gone are those days where a simple few rupees of cashbacks and discounts can get the customers. Maybe they can get it, but they can't retain the customer. The future of the customer is always about consumer first, digital first, convenience and transparency are the core metrics of how the future of the customer would be built on.
Fantastic, Katie. No, thanks for that. And I would love to turn this towards Nupesh, who's actually, when I picked up on what you said about trust, and somebody who brings us comfort at both home and in the office, who better than to talk about, how he's kind of, sustained this brand over, so many decades. So Nupesh would be, and I do want to spend a little bit of time on this, I think the central question about, how the consumer is different, and then we pick up some pace on the other questions. So Nupesh, your thoughts on the consumer of the future?
Yeah, thank you. First and foremost, there will be certain aspects which will remain unchanged, irrespective of digital era, irrespective of digital revolution. In the sense, major thrust on innovation, design, product performance, service after sales, and reliability and consistency. So I think these are the aspects which will remain consistent. Now, there are several aspects what millennia or new era consumers want and why. As everybody knows, in last 5 to 7 years in India, there has been a complete digital transformation. Now there is 100% penetration of mobile phone. Internet penetration is in excess of 60%, which used to be just about 20% about 5 to 6 years before. And the cost per GB data, which used to be in 4-figure about 6-7 years before, is in now in low 3-digit. Credit goes to Reliance Jio. And that has completely transformed the way in which business is being done. The brands are being recognized and consumers look for the product. And I will like to give an example during my work from home at the time of COVID. So I was staying on the outskirts of Ahmedabad in a farmhouse, and we had 2 servants staying full-time with us, and they were not even 7th pass. And I was amazed to see that they were watching movie on their mobile. They were making some bet on Dream 11. And very surprisingly, from across the e-commerce portal, they were making the purchase. And before making the purchase, they were actually comparing peer products, its performance, its price. So this is about new era consumer. And actually, that really led us to start in April and May 2020, which is a peak summer of sales of evaporative air cooler, to have a online to offline sales to the consumer, which was extremely difficult at that time because of the several supply chain constraints, but we could activate it within less than 2 weeks. And it works such as depending upon the consumer's preference and the requirement, it used to facilitate selection of the model. The order was directly passed on to the closest dealer, and depending upon the price point, what consumer is comfortable under the constraints, several thousands of dealers actually ensured even during lockdown the delivery is made to the consumer. And not only in air cooler industry, in entire consumer durable and appliance industry, that D2C model at that point of time was probably the first or one of the first.
Got it. And Nupesh, I'm going to come back to you on your D2C model. I'd read up about it, so I'll pick that up in the next question. But Priyanka, just to complete the circle, and let me just change it a bit, and pardon the pun. But what's the one thing that keeps you awake at night about the next gen consumer?
And thanks, Joy. The one thing that I tell, everybody, I think we are in the business of selling comfort. Okay, we sell comfort, as Pushkar or Katie said, backed by technology and science. But I think since it's been 2 years since we launched the sleep company, being in the business of comfort, I think we've lost the sleep, right? So I think what keeps us up at night is it one single question: what is it that my customer wants? Right? What is it going to delight our customer every single day in every single experience that they have with the company? Right? So I think that's what is keeping us and everybody at the sleep company up. What will continue to delight our customers? And as I think Katie or Pushkar said, one is this customer is becoming very, very product savvy, right? So, from evolving from pricing being the biggest driver, product is becoming the biggest driver, the quality, the efficacy is becoming the biggest driver, right? And that's why if you see the story of ingredient, as Mallika said, or the story of science, innovation has started to play a big role, right? Because, and this I feel, Joydeep, comes from the fact that customer has started to think about themselves, right? And I think this has been a lot triggered with COVID. I think about my comfort, I think about my well-being, my health, my fitness, right? And that's what I think is the big change that we've started to see in consumers, where my well-being and my health, and hence what products I buy.
Joydeep, if you're okay, I'll just say one word for one line when I was hearing everybody. Future of the customer is the customer will have a voice. The voice wasn't available in the history. Now you choose whether it's a social media or a different. If the customer is not happy or happy, customer has a way to express and voice out about a brand. I think that is ingrained into every brand building. Now we talk about it. I think that's something that we got to take it as a basics.
No, absolutely. No, Katie, thanks for bringing that out. And before I move to the second question, just wanted to, ask Mallika. Mallika, I was reading that you do Ask Me Anything session, and you talked about how you're using the voice of the consumer into your product innovation. So, just a couple of sound bites on that would be, great. And then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah. So Joydeep, actually, when the company started, and the first advertorial that the company put out was actually my story shot in my house with my 2 daughters. Because the reason the company exists is because I couldn't find safe and natural, effective products for my daughters and for myself when I was pregnant when they were born. So what we did was, because it was my story that went out first with everybody, we have this property where, just from a whole perspective of authenticity and transparency, we have this property which is Ask Mallika Anything, which is where the founder comes on the platform on Instagram, and we open up to the community, where the community can ask me as many questions as possible. So we get all sorts of questions around what they like about the product, what is it that they wanted to see change. A lot of time, a lot of product innovations get driven by them. And what we have done is consistently taken their feedback and improved and shown them. So just for an instance, right, we launched a toner. The toner was in a typical format of a flip-top cap where you put it on the cotton pad and sort of apply it. And when we did it, the consumer came back and said, can you do it in the spray format, right? We on the spot put up the story peg where I asked them for a poll saying that, do you prefer your toner as a spray format or do you use it on a cotton pad? we got 80% of the people who chose a spray format than a toner. So we quickly sort of reintegrated the packaging and made it as per them, right? And we've done consistently these things. And because there's a person attached who comes and tells you the story, there's a stronger connect that the people have. And we have seen over a period of time that we used to put out the story on one day, on the day of the event, to pushing it out to a day in advance, because that's when it starts. So before I start my day on Monday, I actually, before coming to office, answer all those legs of questions, because there are a lot of them. And always what we also do is, through the course of questions, keep answering and figuring out, right? Like one of the latest questions that we had was on a product that someone said we wanted to launch. And I instantly asked them. So for instance, we have a protein shampoo, and people this time had the largest 2-3 people wrote in saying we want larger packs for it. So the question went on saying, do you really want us to launch a bigger pack for this particular product? And people gave answers to that. Now that will flow into our product development and cycles and, sort of fixing of the products and all of that. And also what we do is, at the end of the session, I always ask them saying, what is an ingredient that you want us to work around with? Or what is a product that you want us to launch next? And just because we've constantly been working on their feedback, they kind of keep asking and interacting with me on that particular platform on that one day. And since it's defined as a Monday where I will go and have a conversation once in a month with everybody, that's when the maximum engagement also happens. But I think it's brilliant as a format, because that's the true form of D2C, where you're so connected with your consumer that your consumer is a part of your entire journey of not just evolution, product development, but also the feedback. So it sort of completes the whole loop for them. And the fact that the brand is listening and that you can have a conversation with someone is enough of a reason to believe in the brand and sort of drive comfort from it, right? Because it's not just a brand, but there's also a person attached to the brand that you know.
Fantastic story, and it reminds me a lot about Glossier as well. So and Mallika, thanks for that, because that's a perfect setup for the second question that I had, which is how are consumer shopping journeys evolving, right? And I like to start this off with Nrupesh. Nrupesh, I read about your D2C that you started. So would love to hear about that. And then, Pushkaraj, if you can talk about, the Lakme story as well, that would be super interesting for the audience. So Nrupesh, just a bit about, how are shopping journeys evolving, and how are you actually kind of, addressing those changes?
I think now in consumer durable and appliances, D2C is something given, because sooner or later, almost all consumer durables appliances will have to have that channel. But it is much beyond merely developing the e-commerce site. I think it is all about online, how you give satisfactory experience and delightful experience to the consumer. So as I mentioned earlier, say in Symphony, in the residential category, we have more than 50 models. Many consumers find it difficult for a specific room or area, which model is more relevant, and that too be fitting to the price point. So we are facilitating whereby it directly props up as to which model is available, of course, considering whatever is available in the stock with the company or with respect to your closest dealer, if it is online to offline. About earlier online to offline, we were actually stunned that in April and May 2020, we received more than 6 lakh inquiries. Of course, due to supply chain constraint, finally, only about 60 to 70,000 supplies we could make it. But importantly, we had valuable database of those consumers, which can be used in several ways. And what we are really looking at, omni-channel. And omni-channel is certainly very useful, because there are consumers for our product who are well aware about the functionality, about the experience, and for them, online experience is sufficient, and they can pick and buy and conclude the transaction at that level itself. But there are second class of consumers for whom it may be lifetime experience, so they wish to, over and above online, touch and feel and have an experience, and then select. And at that level, they may conclude the transaction, or out of them, there are many other consumers who come back online Again, they make the comparison among various competitors, among various models. They also compare in terms of the available deal and finally decide. And in that respect, variety of algorithm, in fact, artificial intelligence, etc., are quite helpful. But the challenge for the companies, say in consumer durable, we do have more than 30,000 retail dealers. So no way we can at the same time antagonize them, because still they contribute like 75% of the retail sales. So they are the backbone. But as it happened 7-8 years before, there was a parallel large format store. And now it is apart from e-commerce through Flipkart and Amazon. Now it is D2C. So still how to align the interest of everybody and still to maximize. But another important advantage in D2C or e-commerce, what we are finding, the retailers are not having presence in some of the B grade and C grade towns and cities. But very surprisingly, through D2C or some of the e-commerce, we are in a position to deliver there.
Got it. Pushkaraj, I understand, and if I'm not wrong, what you've done on the D2C side with Lakme has actually been a model for Unilever globally, right? So we'd just love to hear as to, and I think you've been an early starter, in this journey. So, if you look back at the last 5 years and then looking forward, how are these shopping journeys evolving, and how do you, as with your business, address those?
So I think, first, if you talk in terms of frameworks, because that just helps us crystallize, some of these movements, I think, and this thought came in, I think in 2014 or 15, when I think, one of the thought leaders actually said that the funnel is going to die and the flywheel is the new journey, right? And I just think that what you see in the last couple of years is that's so true, right? The funnel, which had a set of sequential linear stages where the consumer is, virtually like a lab rat going through all of this, and people would keep adding more layers to that funnel, I think is largely dead, right? And especially in higher involvement categories more than others, it's completely dead, right? And I think, by the way, so is the pyramid. But anyway, sticking to the point, I think it's a flywheel which across, and I think, the broad three areas are about attracting consumers, is about engaging consumers and delighting consumers. And the flywheel keeps spinning and becoming, larger and larger as you, deliver a consistent experience and an elevated experience on your discriminator for the brand at every touch point in that journey. And what's remarkable about this flywheel, that consumers can enter and exit anywhere, right? It's not a sequential linear journey. They can enter at any stage. They can exit at any stage. They could make a transaction today, not make a transaction, and sort of come back to where they left or start the journey somewhere else, right? So what this means that at every touch point, and you really have to understand that touch point is not just stuff that you control, but everything that's out there. You need to be authentic, true, transparent, consistent, but also an elevated experience of your discriminator, number one. Number two, I think this whole thing about consumer evangelists and credibility that you get from other consumers is really important. That's really what enlarges the flywheel, right? So to me, the big shift is that we are in an era of flywheel consumer journeys, which means it's a bit amorphous. There is some structure to it, but consumers choose where they enter and exit, right? And I will pick up an example of what we have done at Lakme in our salons business, which is not so much about beauty and personal care, right? Now, if you look at what happened earlier, right? If people chose expertise, chose product quality and all that to make their decision of which salon to go to or which professional beauty brand to trust, post the pandemic, it became all about safety, right? So on your need state ladder, safety moved several rungs above. And we said we must offer our consumer the right and the safest experience possible, right? So first we had to go in and look at the entire customer journey at every minute touch points and work with a bunch of experts. So here we work with a panel of doctors to say, how do we give an elevated safety experience? And then how do we communicate it? right? And then when we sort of, deconstructed it, there were some 55 things that we needed to do. And there was something which was as sort of, banal as screening and, the right kind of sanitization and stuff like that. But we also had to re-engineer the portfolio, change the standard operating protocols of some of our treatments, right? Shorten some stages, lengthen some stages. In some, the equipment that we were using, we needed to have sealed kits for it. We had to move to monodose kits in treatment. So there were lots of, fundamentals that we had to change, and to do that at a time when there was, very stringent lockdown enforced. So we had to do a lot of stuff across that customer journey. But more importantly, we had to be consistent about its communication, right? So we actually spoke to our consumers with a very bold statement to say that your safety is our first priority, your beauty comes a close second. And this actually is a big risk for a beauty brand like Lakme to take, right? Because we were, everyone knows Lakme has been the most iconic brand, led and bred out of India. And to make that statement was a bit bold, right? And then, of course, to stay true to that and communicate what the consumer needs to do, as well as what we have done at every touch point, and amplify this at every touch point which is there in the consumer's domain. So whether it's social media, and social media just doesn't mean Facebook and Instagram, right? You have to sort of be consistent in professional networks, on personal messenger networks, etc. So to be able to communicate that consistently, and then ensure that it's sort of it's true to life in the salon. For us, the professional, the therapist, is also equally important, and therefore every therapist went through 30 hours of training, and every housekeeping staff had to go through 30 hours of training, a certification, an audit, to be able to do that. There were still some consumers who said, while I trust Lakme broadly, but I want to see it with my own eyes. We organize video walkthroughs for all those consumers, right? So we reached out to consumers and say that I'm not telling you watch my video or something which is shot in a controlled environment. Why don't you call your salon and get the team to walk through to that? To be able to do that, Joydeep, we had to have an audit process where these walkthroughs were done by an internal team of auditors. Every element was questioned, every team member was interviewed and certified, and only then we would allow the salon to open, right? So there's a bit that the consumers see, but before that, there is a lot on that iceberg that consumers don't see, right? And because we offered such a consistent and elevated experience on a dimension which was actually outside our domain, right, which is safety, right? And some consumers actually told us that you're doing a better job than clinics and hospitals, and we took it with a pinch of salt. But I think the stats speak for it. So when we ran a study with our consumers on how safe do you find the Lakme salon experience, 97% said that it's safer than my house, right? And that was a big plus for us. Our net promoter score pre-pandemic was 58%. We had just started this about 4 or 5 years back, and we are up that journey. So 58 is nothing to sort of feel delighted about. But post-pandemic, now it's at 88%. Right. And that's because we took that one attribute and over-delivered on that attribute at every touch point, and consistently communicated and amplified it. And likewise, I mean, this is what is here today. Going forward tomorrow, safety will be table stakes, expertise, right? Or product quality or science, whatever attribute you pick, I think you need to offer an elevated experience across the entire flywheel journey, because you don't know where the consumer is going to enter, where she's going to exit, what she's going to tell other people, right? And therefore, you really need to work on the flywheel of the consumer journey.
Got it. No, fascinating. And Pushkaraj, that NPS score is something to be extremely proud of. If I'm not mistaken, that's higher than, let's say, the Mandarin Oriental or the Ritz Carlton. So you should be, extremely proud of, what you and the team have done. Just to kind of round up on this question, I mean, Katie, if I can pull you in, so we're all clear that the shopping journeys have evolved in the ways that Rupesh and Pushkaraj talked about, and I think Pushkaraj kind of mentioned about some of the metrics from your vantage point as you see it. How are what are the right kind of metrics that as marketers and retailers we can use and monitor to understand these changes? And going back to what you were saying earlier, there are multiple touch points, there are these experiences, each one matters, and so how do I kind of think about the right kind of metrics, etc., to understand what's happening in the shopping journey?
I think before I get to the metrics, I think I want to congratulate Pushkaraj and team. 88 NPS is like crazy. I think that's something really you're doing well, and I think you should keep hitting that again, Pushkaraj. And that's definitely one metrics. That every company should look at it. Second, I think needless to say, the return ratio. Very very important in a e-commerce digital journey. Third, you look at contact ratios. The contact ratios are how many products that you sell, and out of 100 products, how many returns that you get, or how many support issues that you get with that. One is return ratio, and second is contact ratio. You want to make sure that while the NPS wants to go up, the returns need to go down, and the contact ratio need to go down, are the key metrics. But also at the same time, how many you're converting from cart to checkout. That's also important. You probably and where is it customer dropping? And I think that's where I think both Pushkaraj and Mallika really touched upon this point. So as Rupesh, I just want to look at how do you reduce, if at all these are the metrics which is very important. We got to drive personalization, and through personalization you can really drive return ratio to be very low. How? So if you can really implement hyper personalization, and I'll not go into the nitty-gritties of how you do it, but if you actually can figure out, if KT Prasad is the person who comes and orders particular, let's say a shirt, maybe of size of 42, and he returned twice. Now, maybe because of size or whatever, but I go back in the third time and say, I think based on your size parameters, I'll order again 42. And you should be able to come back and say, what, KT, this is the last 2 times you returned on the same size. By the way, this brand has the similar size patterns as what you're buying. Maybe from all our understanding, maybe you should buy 40 this time. Do you want to evaluate? So through this, actually, you will drive your customer experience better, number one. Number two, your customer and you're tracking their journey points. And by proactive engagement, you have a better conversion than anything else. Fourth point I will mention, your contact ratio I talked about. This is very important if you're running a large e-commerce or operations, you want to make sure that you have less number of people handling more number of customer queries and issues, either by technology, but simplest way, tell the customer upfront. I think that's what Pushkaraj is talking about. Tell the customer that, if this has got a problem, you can return it to us, no questions asked. I think you got to give the customer that confidence that, order with frictionless, and we will take care of the rest. If you can put in all of these measures, you can drive it. Second, I think we talked about differentiated CX, and Pushkaraj mentioned about that time and again. The currency or the differentiation going forward in any of the e-com retail space, in particularly, it is how you take care of your customer journey points. And again, I don't want to go double clicking. I think I agree with everything that Pushkaraj said. But third thing, very important, and if you really want to drive value to your customers, make sure that your communities are engaged. Now, if your customers have a community, I think Mallika touched upon that, founder-driven community. Like we also have, at Zendesk, we also have, voice of customers as a way to listen into customer and make them feel part of the product roadmap. And I'm sure if I ask Priyanka will say that, yep, they are something, they'll keep listening from the customer and how comfortable, is it soft, is it too hard, maybe in the comfort of mattresses, or if it is anything else. Like we talk about, you as a customer wanted this product feature, for instance, it's not available. Tell us what you need. We have a voice of customer and we put that back into product roadmap. Point number one. Point number two, remember future of the customer that we're talking about. These customers are digitally savvy, well informed, and predominantly driven by their community of people around that they trust. That means they will go look at a community that they actually trust. Could be Quora or anything else that you might want to think about. They'll ask, hey, if it's this product of vitamin C from Unilever, or it could be maybe a protein shampoo from Momsco. What is your product? What's your feedback? Has anybody used it? So they want to look at for community. So brands need to listen into this community as a second source of information and figure out a way of engaging and giving that comfort so that you can drive the business value and experience to customer. I think those are the 3 factors apart from those metrics. So
Fantastic. No, thanks for that, Katie. And I think, I want to kind of, now move the conversation into, we've talked about consumers and next consumers and how they are different and yet somewhat similar to, what we have today. We talked about, the flywheel that Pushkaraj talked about. Let's kind of, take that discussion now into saying how are all of you using technology to not just decode but win with consumers, and let me draw Priyanka into the conversation and then ask Malika to follow her. So Priyanka, I mean, I would say that some of the advantages that, let's say, newer companies have is that you pretty much started from a clean sheet, right? And have had
Yes.
therefore the opportunity to use and put in technology and digital across all your processes. But would be great to hear about how the sleep company's done this, whether all the way from sensing trends to product development, to influencing and engaging with consumers. Would just love to understand how you're doing this at the sleep company.
Sure. Thank you so much, Joydeep. So if you see technology, right, for us, technology is at the forefront of not just product development, right, but also customer experience, right? How do we leverage technology, obviously, to first design the right products that can delight customers, and second, streamline the whole customer experience, as Pushkar Raj said or Katie said. If you see, let me first talk the customer experience, right? The first point, if you see all the touch points, they're merging into one, right? It's not the role of Instagram is just to engage customers, or the role of let's say Google or Facebook is just to drive campaigns that deliver their ROI, right? I think the role of all the touch points has become to delight the customers, right? To make sure that you are personalizing for your customer needs, right? And I think that's where technology plays a very, very critical role, right? So for example, we use at the sleep company, we use a lot of CRM tools to make sure that we understand what exactly this. So the customer would have touch based us with on WhatsApp, right? He wants a mattress. He would have also talked to us on Instagram, right? How do we ensure that when we talk to the customer the second time or the first time, we know what they want, right? It shouldn't be a new conversation all over again, right? It shouldn't be like, he has to explain to me what exactly he wants or what is the problem he has and why he needs a new mattress, right? So how do I streamline and make it as one single platform to make sure that the customer experience is seamless, right? And I think that's where technology plays a very, very big role, right? Which is streamlining all your touch points, be it your calling, be it your email, be it your WhatsApp, your Facebook, your Instagram, Amazon, your website. Because I think, as Katie said, it's not just your website or Amazon or Flipkart, right? It's the whole ecosystem that I think defines how you can win as a D2C brand and how you can continue to delight your customers. I think that's the first thing, right? The second is, I think, which is core for us, is the product, right? If you see, one of the big thing, when I think from my personal experience, when I became a new mother, I realized that how critical sleep was. And I'm sure Malika here can vouch. I think every new mother can tell you that, one thing you're most deprived of is sleep, right? I think that's when it struck me how critical sleep is, and I could not sleep. I tried so many options, and I'll tell you a fact. That time we realized how no innovation or very less innovation has happened in this industry. We all, I think, most of us sleep on form or memory foam. Do you know memory foam was invented in 1960s, before I think most of us were born in this panel, right? Or in this discussion. I mean, that's before anything in our life turned smart. Our phones, we use smartphones, we use smart lighting in our house, but we spent 26 years of our life on a mattress, and it is still that old coir cotton form mattress, right? I think that's when we decided that, why can't our mattresses or comfort products become smart? And that's where I think technology, the science of human body, right? The science of pressure came into picture, and we invented smart grid. It's our own patented technology, right? And I think that's the crux of how you can leverage the science or the consumer insight to really develop products that can change the way or improve the lives of our consumers, right? So I think, for us, and today also what we do, which is leveraging again the science or the technology of different SaaS tools we have, which, Malika said is listening to the customers. Right? How do you, one thing is, okay, we are talking to our customers, but how do I make sure what are the big things customers are telling me, right? One is I listen to the customers through these tools. And then second is, what are the actionability we are driving through these listening tools, right? And, I feel very happy, and Malika said this, we use these things to really define our R&D portfolio, or, our pipeline of products, because who is better than a customer to tell me what to launch, right? I think, in defining our product portfolio, the technology, and as well as in defining the customer experience, we leverage technology at every end.
Got it. That's great to hear, Priyanka. Malika, I just wanted to, you talked about ask Malika, anything, right? So this is my question to you. As you think about, I'm sure a lot of you are using technology in various aspects of the business, but what has been something that you found really surprising in terms of its, efficiency or effectiveness of, the way that you use technology? I mean, you talked about, using it in your product development. That's great. But in any other aspects, something that you found, surprisingly, helpful or, effective that you wouldn't have thought otherwise?
I think the way I look at technology is using technology to make life simple, right? So whether you use the technology to make life simple for the consumer who's shopping for you, or for the team to sort of give a higher productivity level, right? And both, I think, have their own separate roles, right? So from a company perspective, sort of implementing tools that give you good tracking so that the consumer doesn't have to call the customer care constantly, has both dual effects as well, right? But I think what's the most interesting for us, and the reason why a large amount of D2C companies are also mushrooming, is how the technology is being leveraged to create customer cohorts. And those cohorts are so specifically created based on interest, target, zone, space, wherever you're living. And it has just made advertising way much simpler than what it used to be in the traditional form, right? The traditional form of advertising just meant TV, which meant mass communication to mass. It's great for brand awareness, but maybe a smaller brand did not have a chance to sort of succeed there because you did not have the ability to kind of do those spends, right? So I think technology has massively changed that on one aspect. And there's another aspect of technology that, is really helping brands these days. And if you use the technology well, it can really create a very strong go-to-market strategy for you as well. So for instance, what we do at the Mom School, right? I have an online site. And from the online site, I know exactly where the consumer is shopping me from, right? In that particular city, I also know the pin codes from where I get the maximum orders. Can that data be used to create a retail strategy for yourself? Right? So you know exactly that you have some consumers who are buying you from that state, city, zone. And can you figure out retailers in that zone where you can create physical presence and hence have higher optics, and give the distributor, the retailer, and everybody in that chain the confidence for you to be able to create a massive impact from a sales perspective? Another instance, loyalty programs. It's very easy to create loyalty programs on online platforms, but can you use technology? And we try and use technology to kind of create an omni-channel aspect where even if you buy from a store of mine which is based on a retail outlet, how do I give you the same benefit of what I would give an online customer for? Like, let's just accept the fact that the lines between online and the offline worlds is just so blurred today that I may be standing in a retail store right with the product in my hand to make the purchase, but all I would do is check up the online sites to see what is the best price, because the consumer of today is value driven. If you tell me that I get a 10% cashback into my account or a loyalty program if I buy online, but I don't get that on a retail store. Now, big chains might give me the benefit, but individual stores can't, right? And then you have a drop off. And that's not the experience you want to deliver to the consumer, because I would hate for you to be holding the product in your hand and leave the product and move on, right? So how is it that you use technology to create similar experiences on the online and the offline world? Because at the end of the day, it's a brand experience. And that's what Puruskar also talked about, right? When he said that it's all about creating that brand experience, and how do you ease the life of the consumer And how do you ease the life of everyone in the ecosystem so that technology can deliver the maximum benefit both in terms of customer experience and also sales? And that's typically how I look at technology.
Fantastic. So, no, great examples that you shared, Malika, on this, right? So, fantastic. Nupesh, far from the world of comfort and mattresses and Malika's products. You talked a little while earlier about in the context of your D2C play, the fact that you still have a very strong offline retailer base, right? And how do you need to actually carry both channel partners along with you? Uh, and while we've talked about, let's say, technology and how you can use that with consumers, can you share some of your learnings or insights on how you've used technology to win with, let's say, retailers or your customers? I do understand that let's say the durables industry, there is a lot of focus, whether it's a Philips, a Havells, in terms of actually recognizing that the retailer is a very, very important part of the entire shopping journey, and a number of ways to actually engage with them. How, any thoughts or insights to share on that, and how you use technology to do that?
Very pertinent question. So wherever possible, the trade partners who wish to join in the funnel channel, we try to involve them in D2C. So one is a parallel network, but at the same time, existing channel partners also we involve them to maximize their sales and also to optimize the supply chain. That's number one. Number two, we don't wish to rock the boat overnight. So D2C, or as earlier it was done, e-commerce or modern retail, it has to happen over a period of time. Doesn't mean Panchvarshiya Yojana, but in terms of the loyalty program of the dealers and distributors, taking care of some of the issues, and also tackling through different kind of service after sales. And coming to second part about the technology. So we are going to come out with the IoT in air cooler, and IoT not merely connecting on mobile, but through that variety of consumer feedback and complaints also we can resolve through that. Secondly, it's very important in our kind of industry how to do the installation, how to operate it, etc. So online video, which can really facilitate that, and in centralized and ducted air cooler, which are a short of the projects. In fact, we are working out on different kind of business model with the help of the technology. Many a times in many corporate, having a approval of capex is very difficult. But if it's a recurring expenses, it's very easy, as you might be doing even with Bain and Company. So to take care of that, say if we have installed 20 tonnage of centralized and ducted air cooler in a large factory, but their usage is only 6 tonnage for 8 hours and 20 tonnage for 3 hours, then automatically through technology, it will be operated, maintained, and supplied by the company, but billing will be on hourly basis, as currently it is being done in some of the laptop or even on the printer. So in a way, it will create annuity model for the company, generating outstanding ROCE. And in the respect of technology, I will like to cite another example other than Symphony. I'm really fascinated by the story of Nykaa. Nykaa, it is currently where it is, not because of its brand, nor because of its offline or online presence, but as I believe, purely because of the type of the contents which it is sharing and providing. So it is in the respect of the Nykaa army. So I think they have their own army of hundreds of designers as well as beauticians who keep on sharing the contents in about 7 languages. Then there is a Nykaa affiliate program whereby influence makers in terms of the designers and beauticians, some of the very, very leading, they keep on sharing the contents. And whatever traffic is generated or sales is generated, their remuneration is linked. There is a Nykaa TV, and on other day I was really stunned when I saw that on Nykaa TV they have contents in excess of 1 million YouTube hours, and subscribers are more than 1 million. And Nykaa network, so they actively encourage their consumers to socially chat and interact with each other to get the feedback, to get the suggestion. And they have more than 3 million customers under that. And finally, there is a Nykaa beauty book. So under Nykaa beauty book, only in last 12 months, they have created more than 500 blogs. So I believe there are lessons to learn across the industry from that. And of course, many other examples.
Absolutely. No, no, lot of the interest around, UGC and all. Let me just move on to, one of the last kind of, questions to discuss, and I would love to get, Pushkar Raj and Katie to opine on this, which is in my, the constant struggle in my mind as to, the human creativity at one end and technology. And Priyanka, you were right. I mean, maybe there are a couple of us who were around in 1960, but not too many, but, pardon my age. And therefore, while I'm not a Luddite, in the sense that how do you actually, combine the best of, human creativity and passion with all the power that data and technology, gets. And Pushkar, would love to hear your thoughts. And then Katie, if you can wrap up on that, that'll be great. And then I'll summarize the discussion that we've had.
Thanks, Joydeep. See, I think Priyanka said it. Technology has been around for ages, right? Largely the kind of technology that we are talking about in consumer businesses, it's been around for quite some time, right? And she gave an example of it being around in the 60s. I just kind of missed it, so it didn't hurt me so much. But I think the fundamental is that this tech has been around for quite some time, right? And whether you look at, what's sort of all pervasive right now, which is, using tech to be able to create consumer cohorts, press a button and reach those cohorts, right? Deliver to those cohorts. It's been around, right? And in the old sort of sales days of Hindustan Lever, we would, find out which shops are selling in which pin code and make plans by that. And of course, it was a painful sort of, green sheet, Excel sheet type of an exercise. Today, you can do it a lot faster. So I think I totally agree with Mallika when she says that technology makes the life of people in the ecosystem as well as consumers simple. Number one. Number two, I think it can also enhance delight, engagement, education, etc. through the customer journey and give an enhanced experience of your brand or the brand's discriminator, and which I think is the other thing that we can do. But I think what's changed fundamentally, and it will sort of take generational jumps from here on, is our ability to use that technology, our ability to be data savvy. And Ogilvy said that 50% of advertising is a waste, and people around him said, wow, and they were comfortable with it. But today, people cannot be comfortable with 50% of brand marketing investment wasted, right? So I think it's sort of our ability to disengage with and question status quo, our ability to work with data, our ability to not be the slave of technology, but actually deliver consumer outcomes, deliver business outcomes using that technology, which I think is the big shift, right? And I just think that if you look at the kids in office or kids in your team, they are a lot more, they exhibit these tendencies a lot more, right? They ask the right questions. They, ask 5 whys in succession till it reaches the right point. Their ability to use technology is really good. And I just think if we are looking at technology as, purely artificial intelligence, where someone will sort of write a program and tell us what to do, I just think it will not cut any ice. Right? I think the real magic is at the intersection of human imagination, right? And it could be innovation, creative, whatever it is, right? But the human imagination to question status quo and therefore then find solutions which can sort of take it to a new place, and then tech which will simplify the path to progress. Right? It's a bit of that, right? And I think what's important for brands is to stay true to your core and not stray just because technology allows you to do something. I've seen a lot of brands do a few things which are completely, against their core, their ethos, which got them in the first place, and stray just because the technology is available. And I think that will separate a brand from a label.
Well, after what Pushkara said, it's difficult to add, but let me say, let me add a few more things about technology. If I say technology alone doesn't solve problems, I think everybody would agree. We got to identify, first of all, if it's a customer, let's identify the customer experience journey. If it is experience that you want to drive either to a partner or a distributor or a customer or employee, it doesn't matter who your custodian are and what you want to deliver. You got to be able to define that experience points and what that outcome should be. As long as you define those, I think you can use a technology to solve some problems, right? So lot of times, if in my current role and being at, Zendesk is considered as a champions of customer service. A lot of people say, no, can you give me the tech, and I think whatever your other customers who are using across the globe, and I think it'll do the magic. And I'm afraid to tell them that, guys, technology alone will not solve the problem. So number one, we got to identify what customers are going through. The customer expectations are changing faster, guaranteed driven. We all know future of the customer is digital first, virtual every day. That means they will always start their journey irrespective of whatever that they're buying, irrespective of what they buy. It could be a mattress to cosmetic products to air cooler or consumer products, anything. They would start their journey somewhere in digital. So we should be able to have an engagement on digital engagement, technology to engage digitally. So you should also understand, if you're a customer of yours, if they come, like Mallika said about, if they visited my website, the same customer visited my app, they've added a product, but they have not checked out, but the same guy coming back in about month later adding the product but doesn't check out. What do you read? I think they're core interested in the product, but it doesn't help check out. So you can use a technology to create a higher conversion. So if checkout drops or a shopping cart drops, then you can solve, technology can solve. But again, if you talked about human, I think humans are absolutely creative. And these mundane tasks that we actually get them to do, I think it'll kill a bit of a creativity. And maybe mundane tasks can be done by technology, but at the same time, it can also provide scale. So technology has a beautiful scale. It can do a very linear scale for your regional growth or international growth. And technology can also remove barriers for you to go faster. Third, technology, we have a lot of data collection. So especially with the digital savvy customers, first, they leave a lot of digital footprint for you. They leave a lot of customer touch points. And it's probably humanly challenging. Let me put that word called, it is humanly challenging to really identify with all the data sets and find patterns. Absolutely. Technology can come and solve the problem for you. If you have a tons of data and you're trying to see, hey, what is my customer trying to buy and what is the most favorite product that they buy, or what is the most thing that they actually look for, they don't find. It's also important, right? If they come to a website, they're constantly looking for a product and you don't have that product. You should also know as a leaders of the company, if this is what customer wants, you don't have it, it's an opportunity to go out and build that product and answer that. So, machine learning can identify patterns and it can actually throw that thing in. So technology is there at the back end, but you got to be able to identify what you're trying to solve for. But more importantly, in the world and the way world is fasting moving and the customer expectations changing faster, and I will only sum it up by saying messaging is the way forward. Some of the channels on how you engaging customers in the past will not work in the future because your customers will not use it. The customers are moved away and moving away faster. You got to embark and embrace that changing of customer behaviors.
Fantastic. I'm quite sure this discussion could, continue for a very long time, but I've got my eye on the clock. So, let me try and wrap up. I'm sure I'm going to do grave injustice in trying to summarize the very rich discussion, that we had. But let me, point out, 3 or 4 things that I'm taking away from this conversation, and I would love, each of you to, do that as well briefly. but my if I were to summarize, from all the discussion that and the learning that I had from all of you, was in some senses to put the consumer back into consumer goods. And maybe Pushkaraj and Rupesh will sympathize, is that for many years we forgot that there was actually a consumer in consumer goods, in our quest for a bunch of things, right? So put the consumer back. And I think I was struck by what all of you kind of said, is that product or product on and experiences are really going to be the key, right? So how do we kind of drive everything around that? So that was one big takeaway from me. The second thing that I took away, and Pushkaraj, I'm going to kind of steal from what you said. It's about the funnel turning into a flywheel. And the third one was to say, how do I get or use technology to keep it simple and make the flywheel spin even faster, right? So those were my kind of three big takeaways. I was expecting the fact that we are at our best when we work at the intersection of imagination and technology. But hearing you guys reinforce that belief, just heartens me, because I think over the last 25 years I've swung from one side to the other, and maybe a pendulum will never rest, but it's good to find some kind of common ground. But those were my takeaways. If I can ask Mallika, 30-45 seconds in terms of what your biggest kind of takeaway, learning, or final comment for our audience would be, and then I'll go around the panel.
I think my final comment on that would be the fact that, as you said, get the consumer back in the consumer goods, right? I think the consumer of today is far more intelligent than what they were before. They know exactly what they want, and they know exactly in which format they want as well, right? So I think the fact that we all figure out a funnel where we are constantly listening to them and catering to their needs becomes extremely important, because if you're not relevant for the consumer is so full of options, availability in today, that it's very easy for them to forget, right? I have, in my journey in the last 4 years, seen brands mushroom do really well and just completely get killed over the next 6 months, right? And all of it is led by the consumer. So consumer is the god on today, and then constantly catering and listening to them is extremely, extremely important.
Fantastic. Mallika, thanks for that. Priyanka?
So I think for me, the biggest takeaway is consumer at the center, right? I mean, consumer is the boss, right? We've always said that, right? I think, if we design everything we do around the consumer, I think that's what differentiates, in my point of view, and as I think everybody said, an iconic brand from a great brand, right? I think that's what, my biggest takeaway has been. Obviously, you use technology to use that. You do great products to do that, right? But everything is centered around the consumer.
Rupesh?
No, one is omni-channel. Secondly, earlier it was a consumer satisfaction and experience. Now, in fact, it's a consumer delight. And thirdly, as per 2021 figures, the volume of digital transactions which happen in India were put together more than they occurred in United States and China put together. So that's the way to move forward.
Fantastic. Katie?
I think customer expectations and their expectations changing faster. The only way that we can be relevant, I think everything that the panel said is agreed, but I think we can bring an agility into a business model, and everything that we do, I think we will stay relative and be relevant to our customers.
Pushkaraj, you have the final word.
Thanks for that. I also got some time, and I like to think in pictures. So I can visualize this Venn diagram with human intuition, passion, and creativity as one circle, and the other circle being technology. And in the intersection of that, there is a sleep company mattress on which there is this 11-year-old girl who's sort of, resting. And it's 11-year-old because that's your consumer of tomorrow. If you can understand the 11-year and 12-year-olds today, that is your consumer of tomorrow, right? And that's the generational leap that we will see. Next to her, sort of mattress side, you have products of the mom's company. You have products from Lakme. You've got her on Zendesk, and maybe she's sort of reading or glancing through a Bain and Company report on the future of the consumer.
And Cool by Symphony.
Food by
Sorry, I
oh.
missed that rotation. Sorry for that.
Absolutely. No, listen, I must really thank everybody for your time, for your insights, and for keeping this discussion going and lively. So thank you very much for this.